The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to Business Performance USA, our webinar series. This is Victor Dominguez talking. I'm Executive Director of Business Performance USA, and I welcome all of our guests here today, and certainly I welcome our featured speaker, Emily Shoup. And we're excited to talk with her and interact with her today on one of her favorite topics: what's culture got to do with it? Why culture is the competitive edge you need, and what you can do about it today. Which is important, two important sub points, because culture, in fact, is a competitive edge. The more you develop it and nurture it, the more responsive and adaptive and efficient and market-seeking your company will be. And you might want to hope that your competitors aren't such minded in regards to their culture, because you can outpace them with the right type of culture. More so, what you can do about it today. Emily will be sharing some tips today in regards to what you can do, what actions you may take in shaping your culture, defining your culture, and helping you move forward. So we want you to think, how can your company be really efficient, and give you some tips and tricks that you can really start right away. So let me jump into it and just finish up some of the housekeeping here. Again, there I am, Victor Dominguez on the left, Executive Director of Business Performance USA. We're truly here to serve you. We are a nonprofit executive volunteer organization. We share our practices with you pro bono in the same way we do with our clients when we charge them. So we really do want to give back. And of course, there's Emily, which is a real joy. So we do want to make this event worth your time. Feel free to ask us questions over the chat feature or the question feature. Whatever is most intuitive to you. We monitor both, so it's not a big deal. Let's just make it easy on you. But ask us questions. Where are you at with your culture? How do you move it forward, evolve it? What steps do you take? You can always talk to me, Victor, at businessperformanceusa.org. Contact me through that portal. And let's continue the conversation, because this is not a one-time event. This is to help you move forward. And with that, I am going to transfer controls over to Emily and let her take it away. Emily, are you good?
I am good.
Terrific.
And you are seeing my screen nice and clear?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, thank you for that great introduction. And culture is really a fun topic, and I'm excited that more people are getting interested in it and really understanding what it's all about. So today we're going to dive into it. Just a few simple things to keep your idea of what culture is all about in your workplace moving forward. So when you think about what's culture got to do with it, I was when we were talking about putting this webinar together, it's February, and so the song "What's Love Got to Do with It" kind of comes out a lot, and it makes you think about the commercialization of Valentine's Day, and it got me thinking, really, what's culture got to do with it? And a lot of times I'll be out talking with people in their businesses or in organizations, giving presentations, and I'll say, we really have to have a great work culture in order to get ahead. And so I kind of get that question a lot, like, what's culture got to do with it? Don't we have to have all of our processes in place, or isn't it just all about having the best idea, and isn't it just about making the best widget or being better than the next guy? And it's really not. Culture is really what can help give you that competitive edge, and that's why we're going to go into a little bit today. And if you think about it, one bad hire in your organization can have a huge impact. And depending on what size your organization is, sometimes people think, oh, a large organization, they must never have a problem with a bad hire. They have problems with bad hires too, even if they have 100, 200, or 1,000 employees. But think about, what if you had multiple bad hires? What would that start to look like? So you have multiple people that just don't fit in with your culture, don't fit in with the organization. It can get really expensive. It's expensive to hire somebody in the first place, and it's expensive to deal with them if they're not fitting in, and it's expensive to get rid of them, and then it's expensive to hire the next person, and in the process you might lose some really good people because that other person didn't quite fit. And we're kind of bringing everybody down, so it can really spiral out of control. And that's just from the hiring aspect of it. But if you think about all the best laid plans in the world, all the strategy that you come up with, all the things that you want to align in order to have the biggest impact on your market, none of that will matter if everyone isn't on board, and if everyone isn't engaged, and if everyone isn't paddling in the right direction. And that is where your culture is absolutely key. Your culture is the piece that pulls it so that everybody's on board, engaged, and paddling in the right direction.
Thanks, Emily. I agree with that, and pardon me for jumping in. I'll note to our audience that in the bottom right-hand corner we have questions we want you to ask us, and a common question I get with some who do care about culture is how do they convince others that culture matters? And I myself have worked with C-suite and senior executive leaders that kind of think that maybe culture means you have to put in a ping pong table and serve bagels every morning. And that's fine. You can certainly make that part of your culture, but I encourage people to think that it's okay to define your culture on your terms. And some hard-driving executives say, well, we really care about profits. What do we care about? We care about making a profit here. And I say, great, so make profit your culture, a profit-driven, innovative culture. That's okay to be that way and be hard-driving, but be honest about it and clear about it. But because people want to perform their very best and they do want to generate profits and make everyone successful, it's okay to bring that right out front. So culture doesn't have to just be puppies and kittens. It could be really capital markets, profit-driven sales mentality, and that's just fine as long as you take the next steps that you, Emily, are going to talk about. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are different cultures where I think everybody kind of goes to the, you know, the ping pong table and the pizza on Fridays, and we all have to sit in beanbag chairs and all that. And that's really only good for certain types of businesses. It's good for creative people. It's good for, it's one of those where it really depends. I do not want to go into my bank and see people playing ping pong and not really focusing on, keeping my money safe. I don't want to go into an IT security company and see things that, if everything is always really laid back and everything is really sloppy, that's not how I want my data secured. So there's your culture depends on your organization, and when I start working with my clients, we always dive into why are you in business, and everyone kind of sheepishly says, well, to make money. Well, of course, I hope you're in business to make money. Otherwise, you should have started a nonprofit instead. So that's okay to own that, and it's what you do with the money that makes a difference. And so all of that ties into your culture. So when you think about, okay, culture being the competitive edge, we're no longer able to throw more people at the problems. I remember when I graduated from college, it was a cool time because the people were just getting hired nonstop, and that was the solution. We have problems, we'll throw more people at it. And over time, we've seen the markets have changed and things have evolved, and you can't just throw more people at the problems. And there seem to be no more costs that you can be cutting. Our expenses are rising, gas prices are rising, and all these other pieces that play into our expenses are rising, but our clients don't want to pay more because their expenses are rising. So really it comes down to how do you get more done with less. And when you think about your culture and the environment that you create within your team, that's really where you start to eke out a little bit more out of the people that you work with. If people are willing to do a little bit more for the clients, if they're willing to go a little bit further to get things done, if they care a little bit more about what is going on in the organization as a whole, if they are a little bit more innovative, that will continually give you that competitive edge in the workplace.
That's a good point, Emily, and I do agree with that. And that's what your slide here speaks to, really, is redefining culture. And this is me selfishly and personally, as a profit-driven, innovative culture. And innovation is the key, but sometimes people get hung up on what innovation really means. They might think, well, only Apple is innovative and market-driven, and that's not true per se, because I strongly believe that innovation, in other words, to novate or to replace with something better, exists at every level of a company and within every company that's doing business, because innovation to me universally exists in operational excellence. And that's kind of what this slide talks about in team input. It could be marketing, sales, and customer service coming together to innovate new ideas to create a customer relationship. And those three departments, which are all too commonly at odds with each other, at least at times, need to come together and collaborate. And you need that culture of good communication, a culture of operational efficiencies, and the desire to improve processes to create an ideal customer experience. And in order to constantly strive to the outcome here, which I often determine as ideal customer experience, you need everybody who is willing to communicate and share and let other people into their world. Let sales into marketing's world, let marketing into IT's world, let IT into customer service world, and forget the silos that often exist and the competition that exists for resources, and really bring people together. And this is what we talk about, that culture as a competitive edge will help you improve or expand the scope of products and services you offer. The reason you can add more, do more, is because you're creating operational efficiencies. You can then scale opportunities, meaning redirect and shift resources to the hot spots where you're creating more profits, more business, and you can reach into local, regional, and national, global markets even. Thanks, Emily.
Yeah, and well, and if you think about if the one piece of being innovative is just the fact that you are comfortable enough to question, why are we filling out this form if nobody ever uses this information? If this form takes me half a day to fill out and that's just the way we've always done it, what if we didn't fill out this form? Innovation comes in very different places, and I work with several clients that you would never think that innovation would really matter, but it's those efficiencies that you were hitting on, where that's what gets them to be able to lower their costs, and lowering your labor costs can be huge. So
that's a good point.
So really thinking about oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Oh, go ahead.
It's just it's sometimes really, really difficult for an employee to ask why or to challenge status quo in a company, and because of the mindset of that's the way we've always done it, and particularly if they're challenging a process that originated from another department or another function, it's like, well, who are you to ask? But that's a cultural issue that we can trust each other to question and improve, and make it a safe environment to do so without threat of reciprocity.
Yeah. You don't want to get in trouble for coming up with those ideas. And so that kind of leads into here, where people work hard for those they know, like, and trust. We all know that we as humans, that's how we make our purchases, right? We want to buy from the guy that we really like, and we trust him, and we know him. That's why some of us prefer to go to the local store. We have a guy that we drive about 45 minutes to buy a car from him, and we've bought every car we've ever needed through him. Even when we went to buy a brand new vehicle, he went to the other dealer to get the truck so that we could go get that through him, even though he was a used cars place, but it all has to do with knowing and liking and trusting them. And when it comes to going to work, you work hard for those you know, like, and trust. I worked with one team that it was a very toxic environment. It was very, nobody knew, and everybody only kind of liked, and they definitely didn't trust the owner. And so what you would watch people do is they would come in late and they would leave a little early, or they would surf the web whenever they had a chance instead of finding those extra opportunities or whatever project needs to get done. They wouldn't complete anything. Everything would get done, it just wasn't necessarily the most efficient way, or, like we were talking about before, the most innovative way. And it really was interesting once you started to realize that really everybody, and this was in an IT shop, everybody would start watching the clock at the end of the day, and like all work would stop for like the last half hour, and then all of a sudden it was like a whistle blew and everybody would leave at 4:30, like, oh, we can finally get out of here. But no work was done for that last half hour. And but if you think about somebody that you have worked with who maybe had poured belief into you and you knew them well, and they trusted you and you trusted them well, if you think about any of those situations, it makes a huge difference. I had a boss, and I just adore her for teaching me these lessons when I was in college. I was, it's funny, they probably don't even need this role anymore, but I was the person who had to make copies and for the department. And so we always would joke around about the Saturday Night Live skit, making copies. And that's what we would do. We would go in and we would get a stack of papers, tests or handouts for all the professors, and we would go up to the copy room and make all these copies and bring them back for her. It was the craziest, boringest job you could possibly imagine. But I loved working for her so much that if I was sick, I was trying to figure out how I could come in. I was always going above and beyond, asking anything else that I could do for her, and so that I was able to expand my role and do a lot more with that job. But it had to do with the great leadership and the great culture that she created. You did not, any other job I'd had in college, I didn't mind if I had to call in sick. If I was sick, I was sick. But for that one, it was like, I will come in on my deathbed. And that's the kind of environment that you want to create. And that's what gives your business the competitive edge when people are going to come in no matter what, and they're going to put their effort in no matter what. That's what you want to work on creating.
That's a really good point.
And so really,
oh, I'm sorry, Emily.
Yeah.
Just a quick housekeeping note. We do have a couple of questions here, but we also like to keep this webinar around 30 minutes because we really appreciate and value your time. We know our audience is really busy. If we don't get to your question today on the webinar, I will reach out to you personally. You can reach out to me, and we can have a real dialogue about your question. And sometimes when I do that with folks, they really appreciate that more because they get a real dialogue going. It's not just a quick question and answer. Just also, last thought in your last slide there, in terms of creating loyalty and a sense of ownership, I strongly feel, and it's always my principle in my own business, that you can't create a great brand experience, you can't create a great customer experience until employees have a great working experience. And if you want your customers to trust your staff, your company, if you want them to be loyal to your products and services, you really need to start that sense of trust, loyalty, and sense of ownership internally, and then inevitably you can't help but be projected out into the marketplace. So if it's authentically happening inside, your customers will experience it on the outside. That's why culture is another reason why it's a competitive edge. Sorry, Emily, you take it.
No, absolutely. That is a great point. And really, there are still people out there who say, employees should just be happy that they have a job. They should just be thankful that I'm paying them. And I get that, and I understand that it can be stressful and a little hectic to hire people and to get them up to speed and all that. But if you really focus on employee engagement, people are your number one asset in your organization. You can't do it all yourself. you're going to have to rely on other people, and so you do have to care about whether or not your employees know, like, and trust you. That's really what it comes down to. You have to care, and if they aren't engaged in your culture, they are likely sinking your ship. And so if you have people that aren't fully engaged, they're the ones that are going to either purposefully or unintentionally, not being the most efficient and not helping your company get ahead. And so that's why I want you to really focus on, you have to care how engaged people are. So when you look at the culture, and a lot of people have asked me to define culture for them, like, what does that mean, and what is this newfound buzzword? And it was really neat when I was looking it up for today's presentation. Culture was the top word looked for online on Webster's dictionary online, the word of the year. So it was the word that was looked up the most. And I found that quite fascinating, because when I started my business in 2010, I knew that I wanted to change cultures in the workplace, and I wanted people to be happy when they went to work, and I didn't think it needed to be as hard as so many people were making it out to be. But when I used the word culture, people really didn't know what I meant, and now almost everybody does. So I think that's a good sign for us that that more and more people are going to be on board. And I know that some of you may be watching this and say, well, I'm just a manager in a larger organization. I can't change the culture. I will push back on you that you can change the culture for your team. And you can, no matter what your environment, you can always change the culture for your team, regardless of what the rest of the organization is doing. And that is critical.
That's a really good point.
And so I wanted to dive into a little.
I'm sorry. Keep going. Keep going.
So I wanted to dive into a little bit on the definition of culture, because a lot of people, kind of question what it's all about, and it has to do with, really, I always look at it as that vibe or that feeling that you get when you go into an organization, or there's certain stores that either the music is loud, or there's a classical pianist playing, or there's funky stuff happening here and there, or everybody. It's really easy to find a salesperson. Like, I feel like sometimes in retail it's easier to spot what the culture is, and then in an office setting, or I've worked with landscapers or greenhouse companies or advertising agencies, then it's a little less easy to pinpoint when you walk in for people, and especially as the leaders, to be looking at it. But if you look at it as the way that you think or behave, and how you get work done in your organization, that's really where I want you to focus. Any thoughts on that, Victor?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a couple of things. Culture has to be experienced, and when I go into a client's or in former jobs, when they hang up a sign about their values and virtues and their culture, essentially, and the same values are not practiced, you're actually doing yourself more disfavor than not. So, it has to be experienced and genuine and authentic. And I'm glad you're talking about the definition of culture, and I encourage, again, it's up to you to define your definition. It doesn't have to be boilerplate, warm and fuzzy, like I said, puppies and kittens. It can be just hard, profit-driven sales culture. I respect the sales culture because you know where salespeople stand. Okay, they're very straightforward with you. So to me, a sales culture is focused, driven, authentic, and very direct in their communications, and that sense of directness is valued. So it's okay to be who you are in your culture. Just own up to it and be able to explain it and have a rationale for it, and connect why your culture really creates success for everyone.
Right, and that leads us right into the first step is really, how do you want to work, think, and behave? How do you as the leader, or the owner of your company, what do you want that culture to look like? And what does it mean to you? What does it look like? and then what do you want others to do? And you really have to start painting that picture so that you're really articulating and figuring out how to live those values, how to live those thoughts. So if you want it to be a fun and creative place, you have to think about what does that look like, what does that mean. Then you can't be, having people punch a clock and then saying, that, or watching, oh, they took a 15-minute break here and then an hour lunch there, but you want it to be relaxed and easygoing. Well, those two aren't going to match up. You're sending out mixed messages. So you want to make sure that you really think through what you want it to be. And if it's, like you said, if it's a kind of culture where it's fast-paced and we're coming up with the new idea as fast as possible, and yesterday's idea is too old, there's certain things that you're going to create around that. And it's not always about, the paint color on the wall. It has to do with how you get work done. And some environments, they want everything to be challenged. Because that's how they decided was going to be the best way to get the best solution for the clients. So every meeting, if you weren't prepared for it, you'd be surprised, but there's like an argument in every meeting. But that's the culture that they have, and that's what moves them forward, and that's okay for their culture. It's well defined, and it works very well for them. And then those who don't fit in with that kind of culture can politely excuse themselves and find a different place to work. So yeah, it all has to do with what you want as the leader. How do you want to work yourself? How do you want to be thinking? How do you want your employees to be thinking? And how do you want everybody to behave?
Emily, I have a question. If you could just flip back to that last slide.
Yeah.
The question is, an audience member who I've interacted with in the past is challenged because there's some leaders in their company really believe in culture, yet her direct supervisor does not. They're not genuine in practicing the values and behaviors that most people, or at least half the people in the firm, support and advocate. Yet she's asking, well, how can I, what can I do about it? It goes back to your other question. If my boss doesn't believe in the culture, what do I do about it? Who do I talk to? And it kind of gets to your point. It's first of all, it's a difficult situation. Secondly, I recommended this individual to be able to articulate the root cause of the issue at hand, not on an emotional basis, but on a very functional root cause. What is the true business issue? And articulate your point and defend and hold your ground on the business issue, not about how it makes you feel, but about how it disrupts operational efficiencies and doesn't connect to strategy and doesn't support the ideal customer experience. So I would suggest to this individual that you continue to think, work, and behave in the proper way. Be the example. Even though you see yourself as a subordinate, technically you are in the org chart, but leaders come from every level in a company, and you can outlead your supervisor from your behavior by taking the high road and then advocating the issue on a business principle. Do you think that's logical advice, Emily?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a client that was dealing with this issue. They had 4 leaders on the same level and then 1 person above them. And the person above them wanted the culture but didn't necessarily execute to really push to make it happen. And so at least we had that level of buy-in and was supportive of the actions that we were working on, the leadership development that we were working on. And so in working with the other leaders and with the top leader, really the more we stuck with it and the more we raised the bar for what was acceptable, down to little things where the people that weren't on board with the culture would come to meetings unprepared. And the more you challenge them on coming to a meeting unprepared, the less comfortable they are. Or if they tend to get really off track on what it was that you were talking about, or they were the ones who were constantly blocking, and what I saw was they were constantly blocking on the innovative moves that the company wanted to make. And the more that the other leaders were in a safe environment to push back and say, you know, how are we supposed to move this forward? Help me understand how you're helping us move this forward by not having this prepared or by not having this information, or I thought you were going to get us this and now we're months behind. The more that they stuck with that and pushed back, actually the two leaders that were not capable of adjusting to the culture, to that new raised bar of the culture, they ended up finding new jobs, and everybody was happier for it. They left the organization, and everybody was so much happier. But it wasn't something that the top leader was, the president wasn't comfortable firing them over it, and it wasn't big enough for him to necessarily, or he just wasn't in a position to step in. He had to do some leadership growth himself, but then they were able to raise the bar enough that those people no longer fit. So that kind of matches up with what you said. You know, as long as you behave in the ways that are appropriate and you push it, you keep pushing it, eventually that other person isn't going to be comfortable because they're just not fitting.
That's a good point. We'll keep moving, but it's a cultural virus, either healthy or unhealthy, and the really good, dedicated people will welcome that kind of tough love. That these are our standards, and the cultures, it doesn't have to, again, be puppies and kittens. It can be, we're a business culture here, and these are our expectations for how you behave, and it's okay to hold that torch. Thanks, Emily.
Yeah, absolutely. It's okay to say we start at 8 o'clock, period, you know, and just put your stake in the ground and own it. Absolutely. So I know I don't want to go too long here, but we have two simple ways. Okay, you're defining your culture, and the better you can articulate it, the better better off you will be. But so we have two simple ways what you're going to do with that from there. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to start sharing. Share your values and your definition of your culture with anyone and everyone, especially your employees. I'm always surprised at how easily somebody can share with me, you know, here's what we're all about and why you should buy from us. You know, from the sales pitch kind of side, you need to be doing that internal marketing as well. You need to be selling and explaining to everybody what it's supposed to be. I think a lot of people just kind of wait for the culture to happen, and well, they know that we're supposed to be, you know, that easygoing kind of place. Yeah, but you're not doing anything to set that up, and you're not telling them that that's okay. So especially your employees, you want to let them know what it is that you value and your definition of culture. And if you expect them to fit in, they really have to know what it is so that they can adjust. They may have worked somewhere where it wasn't okay to do something that is completely okay in your environment, and they have to know that it's safe. And especially when it comes to problem solving or taking ownership of something or being innovative, those are kind of areas where once you get burned, you get really hesitant in the future. You know, you don't want to touch a hot stove more than once, so you have to share that's okay, and constantly be talking about what your culture is. And the more you talk about it, the more it sticks with you, and you start to live it as well. And then the next piece is that you're going to ask your employees what those values and what your culture means to them. That's one of the things where a lot of times we know what we meant to say, but we don't necessarily get things across the way we had hoped that it would. And so by sharing your values and the culture and what you're trying to build, you want to start asking your employees, what's the best way to build those values? What are the best ways to live that culture? Again, if we are a sales-driven, you know, very fast-paced environment, what does that look like? What do you need from us in order to keep that going? Maybe you need a lot of caffeine to keep that going. Who knows? Or you know, maybe they need speedier response times from their support staff, or maybe there's other pieces that they need in order to keep that moving forward. But really the best way is to live the culture that it is that you're designing. And then as the leader, what do you want to ask them, what do you need from me? So if I want this to be the type of place where I can trust that you guys are working on everything while I go meet with new clients, and then that you've got everything under control, what do you need from me in order to make that happen? And what can I do to help the culture grow? You want to be asking those questions of your key team members, and then they will help you make the right moves, because there's a lot of times where we don't realize that our actions are kind of undermining the culture, where we think that we want everybody to take something seriously, but they see us coming in late and leaving early for a certain meeting, and then so they think that it's not taken seriously. Or it could be something where you tend to check your phone a lot when you're having conversations with employees, and so then you get frustrated when they're checking their phone when you're talking to them. So it might be things that you're doing to undermine your culture that you don't realize. And the more you can ask and engage in those conversations, the stronger the culture will be, and the stronger the ownership of the culture will be. I've worked with places where, the more we could get the employees to own that, yeah, this is our culture and we designed it and we decided this is how it was going to be, the better off everybody was. And it always reminded me of, there was one teacher when I was growing up that the first day of school, she would let you define all the rules for the classroom, and everybody knew that that teacher did that. And everybody was jealous of the kids who figured out the little things like, if you haven't given us our homework assignment by a certain time, then you can't do it. And they figured out how to create the rules within her classroom. But then everybody was so proud of those, and they owned them. And it's the same thing at work. You're creating the rules for being successful in this work environment, and then letting everybody own them.
Great input. Thank you, Emily.
You're welcome. And then this is obviously something that I could go on and on about, all of the different things that would really help build and solidify your culture, and there's a lot of different aspects to go into. But really, ultimately, it comes down to defining what it is you want the culture to be, sharing with everyone, including your customers, but you absolutely have to share it with your employees, and more than the poster that's hanging on the wall. It has to be part of your regular conversations, and then it has to be part of your regular conversations to ask, what does that mean, and are we making the right decisions in order to move our culture forward? And then you want to repeat that, and repeat it, and repeat it, and repeat it, and repeat it. You never want to stop. You want to keep on working on your culture. You're always working on building it and growing it. And as you do, you'll start to see your competitive edge really get ahead with your team.
That's excellent advice, Emily, and we're going to get close to wrapping it up right now. So if I may, let me just see if I can put a bow on this and keep on this slide, because I think it's important. While we talked today, on one level, this could seem really high level, a high level subject, and so what do you do about it? I like to start really, really simple. I like these 3 steps here. People that complain about the culture and don't know where to start, this is a very simple and good place to start. Define on your own terms what your culture is. Bring your strategy and business model into it, but define it and be able to articulate it. Understand that language matters. Next, on share, a tip and trick, and I strongly advise people to do this. Employees are going to be sharing whether you like it or not. They're going to be sharing gossip, or they're going to be sharing good things. The good things to me are sharing knowledge, experience, intrinsic knowledge, that is. They're going to be sharing new ideas and how to innovate processes. That's what you want people sharing and discussing and dialoguing. What people tend to share is gossip, and gossip kills culture. The best way to kill gossip is that when somebody's gossiping about somebody else, you drag that gossiper into your office, bring the other person with them, and say, So, Joe, I hear you have some things that you want to say about Fred. Fred, thanks for joining us. Joe, do you want to share now your thoughts about Fred? I guarantee you that's going to terrify people, and when they know that that gossip will be brought out into the daylight and that people will be held accountable for sharing and promoting and distributing gossip, it's going to stop real fast. And then you move the conversation toward things that matter: knowledge, experience, ideas, how to create the ideal customer experience. That's what you want to do with sharing. So, Emily, let's wrap up, if you will. Of course, you jump in. Anything else?
No, I appreciate the way you wrap that up, and I know that it is a big topic and it can be very overwhelming, but just pick one area to start, and really if you just start with being able to write down that this is what culture I want, amazing things will start happening just by having that much focus to write it down and say this is what it is, and this, and then adjust it as you go. It's not written in stone. You just keep adjusting until it works out.
Okay, if you could just hop to the next slide, Emily, because I want to tell people how they can get a hold of you. We are businessperformanceusa.org. We are a nonprofit executive volunteer organization. Really good folks like Emily give her time, and I mean that literally, to help improve the quality and experiences of the workplace so everyone can be more profitable. Feel free to reach out to Emily. Here's her phone number. Here's her email address. I really encourage you to do that because Business Performance USA exists to brainstorm and collaborate. Just think of us in those simple, simple terms. If you have an idea you want to kick around and brainstorm, talk to us. Talk to Emily. Talk to me. Talk to Dr. Jeff, all of our founders. And we're here to just kick things around with and collaborate with and make connections for you. So think of us as a very robust networking organization to exchange ideas, share knowledge, and move your organization forward. We really do volunteer our time to help others because we just think that's what we're supposed to do. So thank you for your time. I appreciate all the attendees. I do have notes of questions that were asked that we didn't have time to get to. I will reach out to you specifically and only to address those questions. And again, we encourage your dialogue and interchange and engagement with us. So wrapping up, Emily, you're a true joy, and I know that because I've been working with you for quite some time now, and you're a gift and a blessing to the world. So thank you for all your wisdom.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Our pleasure. And that, we're closing out. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll be in touch with you soon. Take care.